morning to everyone. Today we will talk on the thigh. Now if you take a thigh, thigh is that part of the water that of the lower limb, the one which is extending from the water that of the hip to the knee joint, or the thigh is that part, the one which is keeping in front and above and little medially the water inguinal ligament, or lower lateral part of the water abdomen. Now the behind and above, it is related to what that of the gluteal region, the inferior gluteal fold, to the water that of the back portion of that of the knee, called as Posterior Fascia. That region is called as a thigh. So this is the region is called as thigh. Now this thigh below and in front related to the knee, that is the patella, and behind and below it is related to the popliteal fossa. So this part is called as a thigh. Now coming to the water skin of the thigh, it is continuing from above and in front the water lower lateral part of the skin of the abdomen. As the skin of the water that of the thigh runs down beyond the knee, it will be going to become as a skin of the leg. The skin of the thigh, that to front, as it runs towards the laterally, it will be going to become as a water skin of the lateral aspect of the thigh. Now the skin of the thigh, as it runs towards medially, it will be going to become the skin of the medial aspect of the thigh, the one which is almost all smooth, and it is completely little bit devoid of the fat, devoid of the hair follicles, so not a fat, devoid of the hair follicles, but the skin of the front and lateral part and even the back, it will be containing the many of the hair follicles, but the skin of the medial aspect of the thigh, it is a little bit shiny. Now the skin of the back of the thigh, it is continuing from the skin of the waist, thereby the skin of the gluteal region. The skin of the back of the thigh, as it descends down after crossing the popliteal fossa, it will be going to become the skin of leg. The skin of the back aspect of the thigh, as it runs towards the medially, it will be going to join to the water medial aspect of the skin of the thigh, which is coming from the front. The skin of the back aspect of the thigh, as it runs towards the laterally, it will be going to become the skin of the lateral aspect of the thigh. So this is what is said to be as the thigh of right side. So this is the thigh of left side. Now you have to go to the superficial fascia, superficial fascia. Now what is the superficial fascia? Superficial fascia as of the thigh, all the things applies. What is applied for the water? That is the superficial fascia of the thigh, the superficial fascia of the water in general. So superficial fascia of the thigh is the one which will be very much nearer to the skin. The superficial fascia of the thigh is very much adherent to the skin. The superficial fascia of the thigh contains the water of fatty granules. Now this deposition varies from the part of the thigh, front, laterally and medially and behind. The water that of the superficial fascia of the thigh, it is continuing from above that to in front. The water that of the superficial flap of superficial fascia of abdomen. So this is the superficial fascia of abdomen. So you will be having one in the superficial flap of superficial fascia of abdomen. So this is what white is the superficial fascia of abdomen. Now out of that, this is what the green what I am showing there. It is the superficial flap or superficial fascia of the abdomen. So that one will be going to continue as the what superficial fascia of the thigh as it runs down into the thigh region. Then the superficial fascia of the thigh as it descends further down, crossing the what knee, it will be going to become as the superficial fascia of leg. Then the superficial fascia of the what that of the where you can say thigh as it you can say runs towards laterally, it will be going to become as the what superficial fascia of lateral aspect of thigh. The superficial fascia of the thigh as it runs towards the medially, it will be going to become as the what superficial fascia of the medial aspect of the thigh. Now this will be very much tightly adherent and it is much more smooth, and in this superficial fascia contains the what abundant amount of the water fat. So thereby the medial aspect of the thigh is very much smooth for the palpation. So this is what. Now the superficial fascia of the back aspect of the water thigh. This is the superficial fascia of posterior aspect of the thigh. It is continuing from the what that of the superficial fascia of the waist and the superficial fascia of that of the gluteal region. Then the superficial fascia of the thigh as it descends down at the back, further it will be going to continue into the water. Back aspect of the knee, that is in the popliteal region, that is called the superficial fascia of the popliteal region, and then thereby it runs into the water to form the superficial fascia of back aspect of leg. So this is the thing that what you will be having. Now the superficial fascia of the back aspect of the posterior part of the thigh as it runs towards the laterally in the what left side leg, left side lower limb, it will be going to The superficial fascia of the what back aspect of the thigh as it runs towards medially, as it runs towards medially, as it runs towards medially, it will be going to become as the superficial fascia of the medial aspect of the thigh, which will be going to join to the superficial fascia of the thigh coming from the what medial side from front, that will be going to join. So like this way the superficial fascia of the thigh will be going to ready to form. Now after having had this, now you have to go to the what? Another flap. Now that another flap, in the sense that one will be going to call it as a orange color. So that I will be putting into this. This is the A with the green. So this will be going to become as a B now. That is called the deep flap of superficial fascia of abdomen. So this becomes a deep flap of superficial fascia of abdomen. Now this you have to go to the bottom. Even you can say third deep fascia. Now the deep fascia of thigh. The deep fascia of the thigh is a one. It is also called as fascial latham. Now this fascial latham is said to be as the water deep fascia of the thigh. So deep fascia of the thigh, like deep fascia elsewhere in the other region, it is the one which will be little bit thicker and it contains the water, more amount of the water fatty, less amount of the fibrous, and this deep fascia, it is quite away from skin superficial fascia. In this part it is the thigh region. Now this deep fascia, it is separating skin superficial fascia from the what underlying structures such as muscles, vessels, nerves, even the bones. And this deep fascia in the region thigh, it is continuing from above in front from the deep flap of superficial fascia of the water, that of the abdomen. Deep flap is continuing. Here I have marked with the orange colored. Now this deep flap of the superficial fascia of the abdomen, as it will be running downwards and towards laterally, it will be going to become as the water. After crossing the inguinal ligament, it will be going to become as the deep fascia of the thigh. Deep fascia of the thigh. This is the deep fascia of thigh, which is also called as fascia latham. Now this fascia latham, it is very much having a different in density, difference in thickness as it traverses in the region of the thigh itself. As it will be going to run towards the laterally, it is becoming thick, and then when it tends to run more laterally, it will be dividing into what two. One is the what superficial layer and another is deep layer of the deep fascia of of the thigh or the fascia lata, which will be running superficial and deep to the water, then one, you can say, thick tense muscle is there, that is called as tensor fasciae. So one which will be running superficial to the water, tensor fascia is called the superficial layer of the water, the fascia of the thigh or fascial fascia. Another one will be running deep to this tensor fascia is called the deep layer of the water, fascial. These will be going to run superficial and the deep layers of the tensor fascia up and down. As it runs down, these two flaps meet and forms as iliotibial tract. So what is the iliotibial tract? Iliotibial tract is a blind tract, the one which is extending from the bone ilium, especially in particular outer lip of the water, that of the iliac crest, from that up till the lateral condyle of tibia. This is fibula. This is called as a iliotibial tract. Now this iliotibial tract, as it runs up, it will be having the waters, definitely get separated each other and forms the water, superficial layer and the deep layer of that of the tensor fascia, which will be running one superficial and deep to the tensor fascia. And this superficial layer and deep layer that is attached to the lip, I mean to say, you can say outer lip of the iliac crest, the one which will be there on the bone ilium of the hip. So this is what. Now, the deep fascia of thigh, that is the fascial, as it runs towards medially, like the water superficial fascia, it will be going to become very much thin, delicate and smooth, loaded with the water, much amount of the water fat. So thereby it is very much shiny and the water smooth for the palpation. And now this smoothness is much more in the water female than in the male. Now the deep fascia of the thigh front, as it descends further down after crossing the knee joint, it will be going to become as the deep fascia of leg, which is called as fascia cruris. Cruris means leg. Now the deep fascia of the back of the thigh. Deep fascia of the back of thigh. Now this. It is continuing from the water deep fascia of the waist, deep fascia of the water gluteal region. That is called as gluteal fascia. Gluteal fascia. It is continuing from above. So above it is continuing from back, the deep fascia of the waist and the deep fascia of the gluteal region called as the gluteal fascia. The deep fascia of the back of the thigh, as it descends further down, after crossing the water, that is the popliteal, that is forming the popliteal fascia. Further it continues as deep fascia of back of leg. deep fascia of the back aspect of the leg called as the cruris. So posterior portion of the water fascia cruris. Now the deep fascia of the water back aspect of the thigh on the water left side here, as per the diagram, runs towards the laterally. It will be going to become as the water deep fascia of the lateral aspect of the thigh, and it will be going to join at the back portion of the water, that of the iliotibial tract, as well as it will be going to fuse to that back portions of superficial layer and the what deep layer of the tensor fascial earth. So that covering will be going to get finished for tensor fascial earth. That is which is the purple there. So this is how the thing has been formed. Now the deep fascia of the water back aspect of the thigh, as it runs towards medially, it will be going to become as the water deep fascia of the medial aspect of the thigh, and it will be going to join to the water the deep fascia of the medial aspect of the thigh, which is running back. There it will be going to join, and then it will be becoming, suffices the whole, you can say, thigh will be going to get enveloped in this deep fascia. Now, question is this deep fascia further it continues or no? Yes, it will be going to run. How where it has to run? In order to understand that thing, you should know about the one important thing. Now that one important thing is the water. The bone of the thigh is called as the femur. Bone of the thigh is called as femur. Now this femur is present in the thigh. If that is so, now we have to cut this femur in the middle, like you take it, this is the A and B cutting line or cutting plane. Then once you have taken the cut, it will be there like this. This is what the femur appears in the thigh, with having this is the skin. This is the skin. Then you will be having, this is what is said to be as the superficial fascia. This is the superficial fascia. Then the orange what will be there? So this is what the deep fascia. Considering that this is of right, thigh, and here if it is you have taken, so this becomes you can say will be the it becomes your left side. So once it becomes a left, so you have to put this thing in a different. So it will be going to come like this will be like this, and that only the change you will be going to get. This will be the water. So this will be there in the same way that what you have got for this. Now this fascia, which you have already finished, it will be ready to run in between the muscles, giving rise to some compartments. Now these things, this is called as medial intermuscular septum. This one is a lateral intermuscular septum, and this will be the posterior intermuscular septum. By means of these things, you will be going to get almost all the three compartments. Now this one is, you have got three. Now this compartment is the compartment, the one which is called as a what? Anterior compartment, which is called as the extensor compartment of the one which will be there here, the one which is present in this point. Then you will be going to get the what? This, what we have got, this is the thing, anterior. Then there will be a what compartment? This compartment is called the medial compartment of thigh, the one which is present in between medial intermuscular septum and the lateral intermuscular septum. I mean to say, the one which should be present in between the medial intermuscular septum and the what that of the posterior intermuscular septum. That compartment is called as a medial compartment. Now this medial compartment, the one which will be there in between the water, medial intermuscular septum and the posterior intermuscular septum, which is called as the medial compartment of the thigh, that may also called as another compartment, that is called the adductor compartment. Then there will be one more compartment. This compartment is called the posterior compartment or the flexor compartment. The posterior compartment of thigh is the one which will be present in between the posterior intermuscular septum and the lateral intermuscular septum, that is called as posterior compartment of the thigh. This is also called as the flexor compartment of a thigh. Now, you have to see that in this. So you will be having, this is the lateral intermuscular septum, this is the medial intermuscular septum, this is the posterior intermuscular septum. These are the modifications of the deep fascia of thigh itself. So this is called as lateral intermuscular septum of left septum. This is the medial intermuscular septum of left thigh. This is the posterior intermuscular septum of thigh left. So this compartment is the extensor compartment. This compartment is the you can say the posterior compartment, and this compartment is the medial compartment. When you will be seeing from back, it is of the left side. This will be the thing when you will be going to see the transverse section of the thigh from front. So this is what in front here. So this one will be what from back approach. So only the thing you have to make it. Now if this is so, now why this is called as the anterior the extensor compartment? Because here all the muscles which are present, which are acting on the knee, they are all the extensors muscles. Now the question is what? Whatever the muscles which will be there in the medial compartment, here, they will be going to all becomes as a what? Muscles which are there, they will be the what? Adductor of the what? Thigh. They does the what? Adduction. Or medial rotators, and it will be present at the medial aspect of the thigh. Then the one muscle which will be there here in the flexor compartment, posterior compartment, they are almost all. They are the back muscles of the thigh, and these back muscles of the thigh, they are the what? Flexors, main, which will be acting on the knee joint. So the name has been given. So all the muscles which are present in those compartments, specifically where they have to be in front, extensor, behind flexor, that is the posterior compartment, medially adductor, they will be acting on the what? One, the joint rather below to that region. Hence, that in general that compartment has been named. And muscles which are there in that compartment, they usually in generally perform those actions. In general. But coming to the what? The muscles which will be present in the medial compartment of the thigh, they will be the what? Adducted. What they adduct, or what they rotate medially, the knee, and as well as they adduct the thigh, drawing the what? Thigh towards medial. Medial rotation of the what? Thigh at the level knee, and then adduction of the what? Thigh. That they will be performed. That is the important, that what you will be getting. Hence those things. Now in general, these all compartment, that is the extensor compartment, is fully in front, or here in front, or otherwise if you will be seeing from back, that is deeply covered by the what? Deep fascia of thigh. Now, the posterior compartment of the thigh, it is completely covered up. thigh, that is the fascia length. So this is what. Now after doing this, now what generally after having had this, question is what is this? The fascia stops here only? No. The deep fascia after giving the compartment by means of the intermuscular septas, which are three, that is the lateral intermuscular septum, medial intermuscular septum and the posterior intermuscular septum, it tries to cover the water that of the bone femur from medial to lateral and from lateral to the what posterior and posterior to the medial, giving rise to periosteum. Of the bone femur. So it will be forming like this. This is the periosteum of femur. Periosteum of femur. Periosteum of femur. So ultimately, what is that periosteum? Periosteum is nothing but it is a modified part of the deep fascia. After having formed the compartment and after having had formed the intermuscular septa and then the compartment. So this is what you should know. Now once you have known, once you have already understood this, then you have to go to the in the what anterior compartment, what are all the things are there? In the anterior compartment, you have got the muscles, you have got the vessels, and you have got the nerves, and you have got the nerves. Like manner, in the posterior compartment, you have got the what muscles, you have got the vessels, and third you have got the nerves. Then in the medial compartment also you have got the muscles, vessels, and the nerves. And the nerves. So after you have reached to this phase, now it is your duty or your concept to move into those compartment specially and try to understand in detail about the myology of the anterior compartment, posterior compartment, and the medial compartment. So in our next class we have to go to the what anterior compartment of a thigh. In that muscles. So myology of the anterior compartment of the thigh. That is what the picture. Now here we have finished skin of a thigh and how it runs. Superficial fascia of the thigh, how it runs, from where it comes, from above. And deep fascia of the thigh, where it comes from the above. But you have to understand, but you have to make it sure when you will be dealing about the deep fascia. Deep fascia of the thigh from above, it is continuing from the deep flap of the what superficial fascia of the abdomen. Superficial fascia of the thigh from above, it is continuing from the superficial flap of the superficial fascia of the abdomen. So, deep and superficial fascia of the thigh, it is from above by only one. Superficial fascia of the abdomen. But you have got that superficial fascia of the abdomen has got the two flaps. One is superficial layer and another is a deep. That what you have to understand. And then in between the superficial fascia and the deep fascia of the thigh, here, in this, there will be a fat. This fatty distribution is differ from person to person, age to age, sex to sex. In front, it is less. Behind, it will be there, not too much compared to the anterior part of leg, anterior part of thigh. But in the medial compartment, the fatty distribution is abundant. So thereby, the medial aspect of the thigh, it is smooth. This smoothness is much more in the what? Female than the male, and in infant also it is smooth. But in others age group it is not. But in the others also, in the male less than the females, less than the females. Okay. So this is what the thing you should know. Then we had finished about iliotibial tract. It is nothing but the modification of deep fascia of thigh as it runs towards laterally, where it will be going to split into two. One goes to the what? Superficial layer and another goes to the deep layer. To the what? Superficial and deep to the tensor fascial. Above it is attached to the what? Lip of the iliac crust of the bone, ilium of hip. Below it is attached to this iliotibial tract, to the tibial lateral condyle, lateral surface. It is a blind tract. Now what is the tensor fasciae? The tensor fasciae is the what? It is the almost all musculature attached to the what? Anterior portion of the outer lip of the iliac crust of its anterior 1/3. From that it will be going to descend down, and then it becomes tendinous, gets attached to the what? That of the iliotibial tract, keeping in front the extension and splitting of the what? Lateral extension of the deep fascia of the thigh. Behind it has got the attachment of the gluteus maximus. And superficially and deeply, it is related to the superficial and the deep layer of the superficial deep fascia of the thigh. Superficial and deep layers of the deep fascia of the thigh, that is the fascial. So this is what related to that. That also you know. Now you should know about this in short, inguinal ligament. Now what is this inguinal ligament? Inguinal ligament is a what? It is a fibrous band. The one which becomes as an arbitrary or a boundary line between the abdomen and the beginning of the lower limb in front and towards the lateral. This inguinal ligament is a band extending from the anterior superior iliac spine. So this is the what? Anterior superior iliac spine. This will be the what? Pubic tuber. Now this you can say inguinal ligament becomes beginning of the what? That of the anterior part of thigh and the ending of the lower lateral part of the abdomen. This inguinal ligament is also called as the Popper's ligament. It is a band of a white, non-elastic, fibrous tissue. It is extending from the what? Anterior superior iliac spine, runs downwards and towards the medially to get attached to the pubic tubercle and the pectoral pubis. It is dividing into three parts: medial 1/3, middle 1/3, and lateral 1/3. At this point, this much is sufficient. With adding one more point, this inguinal ligament is present at the lower part of the aponeurosis of the external obliquus abdominis. Once it becomes aponeurosis of the external obliquus abdominis, it is present below and lateral to that aponeurosis of the external obliquus abdominis, and it is a part of this aponeurosis only. So, aponeurosis of external obliquus abdominis is attached laterally to the anterior superior iliac spine and then medially to the pubic tubercle, then to the pectum pubis. So, it has made tough and it has made strong more by this inguinal ligament. So, this is what you have understood. So, you have understood tensor fascial thing. You have understood what is the inguinal ligament, and you have understood iliotibial tract with all those things. So, in my next class, I will be going with, or I will be going to deal with myology of the anterior compartment of the arm. Means which muscles are there in this compartment or in this compartment. This is also extensor compartment. Okay. This will be the flexor compartment. This will be the what? Adductor compartment. Now, these muscles which are there generally, which are there here, it will be supplied by the nerve called as the femoral nerve. Muscles which are present in this, those will be going to get supplied by the obturator nerve. Muscles which will be there here, they will be going to get supplied by sciatic So with this short introduction and the detailed part of other things, sufficient. But when you come to the next class, you should be thorough in understanding, thorough with red hip bone, femur, in order to know the foregoing topic on myology of